Hello friends, my name is Juliana Garces, and today we're going to be talking about my very first lucid dream and my very first astral projection. Now these happened many years ago. My first lucid dream happened when I was 12 years old, and my first astral projection happened somewhere I think around 14. I'm 29 now, but I'd love to share the story. I'm here enjoying some tea. Feel free to enjoy some tea with me. Grab your cup of tea and we'll do a little story time. So it all began with what many would consider a bit of a dark night of the soul. I was 12 years old and going through a pretty rough patch in life where my spirituality and my connection to source dwindled to nothing, I would say, at least in my eyes at the time. And ironically, I would say the biggest catalyst for my spiritual journey started with that very first lucid dream. So at the time, I was being heavily bullied, and to the point where I had to switch schools, and I was having some trouble with my family. Growing up into a teenager already has plenty of hormones and difficulties, but throwing in some pretty intense bullying and dysfunctional family life and not very good outlets for transforming those, you get what happened to me, which I was a 12-year-old in a pretty dark place. I had been raised Catholic up until that point, but that spiritual belief was very much rooted in blind faith, where it wasn't anything from direct experience. It was all just from what I had been told. That was the first time in my life when I was 12 where I hit that pretty dark place where I told myself that I was no longer believing in God, which is crazy to say now because I'm totally in a different place now. But at that time, I reached that point where I was like, I no longer believe in, and became agnostic. I remember the first time that thought came through my little 12-year-old mind. I was scared I was going to be like hit by lightning or the world was going to be destroyed all of a sudden just for thinking that, but it didn't. So things were pretty rough, and I was having a lot of nightmares, which were rooted in this emotional turmoil I was having within myself. I think there were just expressions of the difficulty that was my current state of consciousness. Through all these nightmares, which would happen pretty frequently at the time, almost every night, eventually I was having one that was pretty classic to horror movies. It probably didn't help either that I was also watching a lot of horror movies because I thought I wanted to be cool. But I was watching a lot of horror movies and having a lot of nightmares, and I was having one of these very classic horror movie moments where I was being dragged by my feet by some zombie ladies, the classic where you're on the ground on your belly and being dragged. Yeah, it was one of those nightmares. And all of a sudden I stopped them, the zombie ladies, and I was like, wait, this is a nightmare. I have a lot of these, so this is just another nightmare. And that's the first time I became lucid. And I told myself I don't have to have this nightmare. I can wake up. So I did. I woke myself up. By pure will, I just woke myself up. I was in my bed and I was like, whoa, how did I do that? I was aware I was dreaming. And at this point in my life, I had never heard of lucid dreaming. I had never heard that people could even do this. I was shocked. I was like, what did I just do? What kind of sorcery is this? And I remember going up to my parents and being like, hey, I was aware I was dreaming and I woke myself up. And they didn't know about this. They were just like, go pray. They were very confused by me. And I was very confused. So I did the only rational thing one can do in that moment, which is I turned to the internet and I looked up knowing that you're dreaming. And I found the word lucid dreaming. And I figured out this was a whole concept, that is a whole skill that people have to be aware of their dreams. And I was like, I'm going to do that again. And I did very shortly after. So that first lucid dream, it wasn't like anything crazy. Some people think, oh, you're going to suddenly start flying or anything crazy, but that first lucid dream, it showed me that it was possible. And it also showed me that in moments of deep suffering, I can wake myself up from them. So I started lucid dreaming a lot after that. And ironically, it was so magical, and I ended up meeting many spirit guides and traveling through many realms. I lucid dreamed very intensely. Eventually, it's what got me into spirituality, because I started to see that there was so much more firsthand to this reality that we can't see and that people don't often talk about. It was only when I got those direct experiences of, wow, there's so much more than just this physical day-to-day existence, that I started to become very curious about spirituality and began seeking information on meditation, on various philosophies around the world, and eventually came to a lot of Buddhist practices and a lot of yogic practices. So I would say it was magical, because I went from a place of being in such a dark night of the soul that I no longer believed in anything divine. And life almost immediately provided me with a divine experience of being awake in my dreams, becoming lucid, where it started to first-handedly show me that there's so much more than just what we perceive in day-to-day life. So it very quickly removed that false notion of, oh, it's just here, it's just this. Everything else is just a bunch of baloney. So I ended up lucid dreaming, and shortly after started to develop a meditation practice, a yoga practice. And through my lucid dreaming research, which by research I just mean looking at YouTube videos, I came across the technique of astral projection. So I would say lucid dreaming was completely natural and self-taught, but astral projection was something that I would say I learned once I learned about this concept. I was open to the possibility because I knew lucid dreaming was possible to astral project. And astral projection, it refers to lucid dreaming because in lucid dream, you're in a dream and you become aware you're dreaming, or you go directly into one, being aware you're dreaming, and you control that dream. But in astral projection, you always start by exiting your body, going back to where you're laying down, and you exit your body, and you start off in some space that's similar to the room you went to sleep in, even though it can be slightly distorted. But it has that characteristic where you exit your body and you start off in the same space where your body was at, but in what people consider the astral realm, and I consider the astral realm. I learned through these YouTube videos that if I was having a lucid dream and I went back to my body and I had the willingness to exit, and there's various techniques such as the rope method or feeling like you're levitating, but I did those. And the first time I was laying in my bed, let's say this is my body, laying flat on my back, and I exited my body, but my feet, these are my feet, started to lift up off of my physical body. This is my astral body. And went completely vertical, but my head right here was stuck. It was stuck. Something that I also found interesting about this astral projection was that it was a day after I had gotten 2 dream catchers, which I know there's a lot of now cliche feeling of like dream catchers and hippies and all that. But at the time they were cool, and I had bought a couple. Nothing fancy, they were like some pretty basic dream catchers, and I put both of them by my bed, and that was the first time astral projected. Was it placebo effect from having them around, or did they actually have an influence? I don't know. That I don't really know. But from there, I astral projected, and my lucid dreaming and my astral projection. Let me take a sip of tea. My lucid dreaming and my astral projection got so intense shortly after, around the age of 16, a few years after, I started to dive so deep into it that it got to the point where I would get home from school, take a nap, lucid dream or astral project, wake up, do some homework, go back to sleep, lucid dream or astral project, and then go to school the next day. So it was like twice in a day. And for what felt like hundreds of years, and I would write these lucid dreams and these astral projections down. And I had the habit of keeping them in a notebook, but I would have to summarize because there's like hundreds of years worth of information I'd be writing down. I'd be on like the 5th page, and I'd be like, I gotta go to school. Like, I gotta go get ready. I can't just spend here all day writing these things down. It's very interesting. And most importantly, even though now my main focus is on meditation and coming deeper and deeper into the present moment and developing more peace in this present moment, and it doesn't have to do as much with outer travel into other realms or accumulating more experiences, it still provided that catalyst from a very natural point of wanting to explore consciousness, which led me to this point in my life where I am now. So I'm extremely grateful for that first lucid dream and that first astral projection. And that's the story of those. I hope you enjoyed this tea time, and I'm planning on doing more tea times to talk about all things spirituality and sharing stories, all that good stuff. So if you'd like that, or if you'd like to watch some of my guided meditations, please subscribe. Blessings.